Hello, and welcome back for coverage on Heresy, the third and final projected episode for Destiny 2. The journey we've been on so far with Destiny has largely been focused on the conflict between the primordial concepts of light and dark, bringing our player character through almost 10 years of epic struggle for the right to exist in the screaming void that is reality. With Final Shape, we will be bringing this ideological and yet all too real war to an end. In the aftermath of this penultimate conclusion, there are legends to recover, questions to answer, and power vacuums that must be filled. I believe Heresy will be addressing that last point, as during our pursuit of peace and freedom from fated destruction, our Guardian, VIP 2014, has dismantled almost every structure of power and order in the Hive hierarchy. Not only are the Hive now leaderless, we have taken this ancient species, conquering force that dominated for a literal billion years, and dismantled them in less than 10. Where there was once a pillar of tithing worship and sacrifice, we have left a fragile and broken pecking order that threatens to collapse everything they built. It is because of this systematic removal of anything capable of issuing clear orders that we've actually left the door open wide enough for just about anyone to step in as the new leader of the Hive. I have a few personal favorite candidates that I think make the most sense, but honestly, I think it could just as easily be a new character we've never met before. Xivu Arath, Savathun, the Hidden Swarm, Kelgarath, the Worm Gods, Toland. There is no shortage of those eager to establish themselves as the truth of the universe behind the cleaving edge of the sword. Still mourning the loss of her brother and burning with hatred over the betrayal of her sister, Xivu Arath has been forced out of her throne world and into the frailty of the mortal realms. Xivu probably has the most drive to find a way to the throne of the Hive, even outside of revenge. As far as we know, her worm still gnaws at her and insists that she continue her nature in embodying war. In the past, Oryx was able to seek out an audience with the Deep, and was able to obtain a new power to defeat their adversary. Though Xivu has been temporarily beaten, she still exists, and that is more than enough for one of the Hive Pantheon to make a triumphant return. The Hidden Swarm are admittedly a bit of a blip in the history of Hive power grabs, but I see a sort of mirrored similarity in the power vacuum left by Crota, then ultimately Oryx, and the current one that will truly be available after the events of Final Shape. The Hidden Swarm were a collection of non-ascendant Hive generals and coven leaders that wished to fill the throne of Hive power. They gathered together in the depths of the Moon Luna and began to enact the most basic tenets of the sword logic. By pitting themselves against one another and sharpening their blades against the bones of their challengers, they might once again build themselves strong enough to bear a leader. If not a champion like Crota, then one even stronger. There was a festering in the swarm. 3 siblings had secreted themselves away and viewed the swarm a failure. They wished to use heretical secrets to make their own new empire. By cutting away one sister's essence from their physical form and offering their soulfire energy to their brother, a new abomination of a knight was born and set to slaying nearly the entirety of the Hidden Swarm. This knight eventually succumbed to the wounds of battle, though their mass execution had been enacted. The final heretical sister began to conspire how they would proceed now that their siblings had been lost. Though suddenly, they were assaulted by whispers and greeted by a pleased Savathun. It is told during this conversation that the Witch Queen was in fact the one behind the trio's conspiracy, and it was Savathun's goals that had been achieved, not the heretical trio. With so many of her possible adversaries now out of the way, Savathun leaves the last of the trio to die as well. This is not the only example of different Hive finding their own interpretations of the sword logic when put to the test. With Oryx, Savathun's, and now even Xivu Arath's seats of power left vacant or vulnerable, there may well be some groups conspiring once again behind the scenes for their own gains. Savathun, the goddess of trickery, has many dirty fingers and many dirty pies. There is almost no avenue of discussion in the lore of Destiny that cannot be tied to Savathun in some form or another. According to the Books of Sorrow, Savathun has spent time studying her craft within the cradle of a black hole, potentially allowing her the benefits of time dilation or even some other unknown effect. Not only this, she has also managed to remove her worm with the help of our Guardian and Queen Mara. Add to this, she managed to influence events so that the Hive may finally be chosen by the Traveler, herself included, now reincarnated as a light bearer. Savathun's threats are many. She may have even crept into our world on occasion. Our discussion and inevitable misunderstanding of her may indeed be actively giving her power. While it seems that Savathun did in fact save humanity during the first collapse, all sources agree that result was merely a side effect to her own ambitions. After the events of the final shape, there may be little preventing Savathun from inflicting her will, not just in the reality of the game, but maybe to the Gardener and Winnower's game itself, or indeed, maybe all the way up to our reality, or past us as well. Kel'Garath, risen from bones, taken by war, and many more failed titles. Kel'Garath is in a race with Taniks for the number of times we have to face the same character in different boss fights. Kel'Garath was originally of the Hidden Swarm, but when Crota and eventually Oryx were felled, he made himself a servant of Savathun. During the time that our Guardian is removing Savathun's worm and dealing with the Lucent Brood, Kel'Garath views Savathun as a heretic and offers his blade now to Xivu Arath. We face Kel'Garath several times on their journey of self-discovery, canonically defeating them handedly each time. Fellow Hive openly mock his loyalty and look down on his many failures. I don't think it would take too much for Kel'Garath to start to twist their views and start to attribute their personal failures to the fact that they were loyal to these clearly weak gods who were defeated by the liars of the light. In all fairness, Kel'Garath has picked up some impressive abilities along the way that make them a pretty formidable foe. They have an element of taken power, and have been allowed to keep their autonomy intact. Through being Wrathborn, they also have the ability to be born anew, though as Xivu Arath's power in question, the Wrathborn may also be in question. If Kel'Garath seeks to seize the opportunity, we may find ourselves facing off against them yet again, forcing us to find a way to end them for good. The Worm Gods have shown in the past that when they've been failed, they are capable of issuing punishment. With Oryx having his house dismantled and beaten in his own inverted throne world, Savathun having turned on the witness and breaking her bargain by removing her worm, even the devout Xivu Arath has been banished from her own throne world by some new upstart being who has simply hijacked their own magics. The Osmium dynasty has given the worms their gods little to be pleased with lately, and it may be high time for these eldritch entities to assert their power. Toland is a bit of a Hail Mary for a candidate at this point. It has been quite some time since we heard from him. But personally, I don't think the Mad Warlock should be entirely counted out just yet. Toland is a self-studied historian of the Hive, having embraced his exile from the city in order to better pursue Hive Arcana. His views are well beyond that of having empathy for your enemy. Toland truly reveres them. While we know that he met his physical end during the fated raid on Crota, his journals also tell of other, earlier trips to the moon. Toland eventually admits to our Guardian that he went with Ariana's fire team not to kill the Hive there, but to meet them. When our Guardian's fire team succeeds in eliminating Oryx, he yells at us for not taking our place on the throne. When we explore the Ascendant Plane at different points, we can often find a sphere containing a consciousness of Toland. Toland was the wielder of the Bad Juju, a weapon so hungry it confounds weaponsmiths to this day. If Toland has not completely lost themselves in the turbulent sea of screams, I have no doubt we haven't seen the last of his ambition. There are no shortage of power-hungry individuals who think themselves capable of leading the Hive. The Guardians have succeeded in turning the tide in the Hive's domination and infliction of darkness on the universe, but I would not underestimate them. However, by virtue of naming the episode Heresy, and not something like Crusade or Piety, I believe we will most likely be facing a departure from the sword logic. The lies of the sky have succeeded where the deep has failed. Even the lowliest thrall can see that. There are truly too many avenues for potential antagonists set up for something like Heresy for the constraints of this video. Nokris and his heretical practice of necromancy, the fact that the Traveler originally chose the Krill back on Fundament, Dullinkaru trapped by her own mother in a torturous cycle with no end, the Lucent Hive making attempts to resurrect Oryx in some fashion. The list of candidates is almost endless. Whoever it may be, though, let them know that the Warriors of the Light stand ready to test this new heresy. Thank you all for joining in on this discussion of the Hive as we revisited some of the players in the Hive scene. It almost seems unreal that we've been on this journey with Destiny for just shy of 10 years, and by the time we reach the episodes, it probably will be a full 10. Through the highs and lows of the game, I've always loved this story, and I'm just so grateful that it plans on continuing. In the break before the final shape, I'll personally be taking the time to explore my backlog. There's been an incredible boon in indie games lately, and I highly encourage all of you to seek them out. Thanks again, and have a good one.